We're up to Daf Mem Amud Beis, and the Gemara is now quoting a brisa to reflect and analyze the machlokes the Tanakam Reb Shimon with regard to the vidui on the Soyer Mishtalech. Is it likuva? Is it critical or not? And the brisa begins by quoting a pasuk here. I have the pasuk open in Parshas Achremos. The pasuk says, "V'asa'ir asher ola olav hagorol azazel ya'amad chai lifnei Hashem lechaper olav l'shalach oso lazazel hamidbar." Ad Mosai, the brisa asks, "Yez zakuk lamud chai." The pasuk indicates that for some period of time, we don't know exactly how long, the Soyer Lazazel has to be alive. And all we know about it is Yamad Chai L'fnei Hashem L'chaper Olav, until we get to the point of L'chaper Olav. So what exactly does that mean, L'chaper Olav? And here we have machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ad shas matan domo shel chavera, until the matan domim of the Soyer hapnimi, the Soyer Hashem. In other words, when it says here in the pasuk, lechaper olav, it's not referring to vidu, it's referring to domim. So we're not talking about the vidui lechaper olav on the Soyer Mishtalech, but rather we're talking about the matan domim of the other Soyer, the Soyer hapnimi, that which we're going to shecht. So it means, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the Soyer Mishtalech has to remain alive until after the dam of the of the Soyer hapnimi has been applied through the hazah. Now, the implication in the flip side would be, if let's say the hazah of the dam of the Soyer hapnimi was already subject to hazah, after the hazah, if the Soyer lazazel dies, then it doesn't have to be replaced. And yet there was no vidu that was recited over. Rabbi Shimon Omer, no. Ad shas vidu dvarim. When the Torah says, Yamad Chai L'fnei Hashem lechaper olav, it's referring to kaparas dvarim, which means the recitation of the vidu on this very Soyer lazazel. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon comes to the conclusion that the vidui, which is now the interpretation of L'chaper Olav, is absolutely critical. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says it's not critical. Now, Rabbi Shimon here is basically reflecting his own shita in the brayse that we quoted on Amud Aleph, that vidui is ma'akev. Rabbi Yehuda is now being aligned with the Tanakam of that brayse on Amud Aleph, who maintains that it's a mitzvah lisvados, but it's only a mitzvah and it's not critical. Let's see if we can pinpoint the yesod hamachlokas. Kidisanya, we learned in a brayse, lechaper. Right, it says Yamad Chai with regard to the Soyer Mishtalech, Yamad Chai L'fnei Hashem L'chaper Olav. And now we begin with the interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda. B'kaparas domim ha'kosuk v'daber. The pasuk is referring to domim. Domim has to be the Soyer hapnimi, because there's no domim in the case of the Soyer lazazel. V'cheinu omer, and now we're going to fast forward here in the same parak to pasuk chaf. And I'm going to read it to you from the Chumash. The pasuk says, "V'chila mechaper es hakodesh, v'es oel moed v'es hamizbech v'hikriv es hasoyer hachai." I'll just read to you the translation here. And he shall finish effecting atonement for the holy, the tent of the meeting and the altar, and then he shall bring the live he-goat. So it says clearly, "V'chila mechaper es hakodesh," and this concept of lechaper is referring to the dam of the parot shel kohen gadol, as well as the soyer hapnimi, which was shechted in, and the hazos done in the kodesh kadashim, and also in the heichal. Is malahalam b'chaparas dvarim afkan b'chaparas dvarim. So we're comparing the v'chila mechaper to the word lechaper olav. So going back from pasuk chav to reflect back on pasuk yud. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer lechaper olav. When it says Yom Chai Lifnei Hashem lechaper olav, b'kaparas dvarim akosim mitaper. In other words, the word lechaper here in this pasuk yud that we started with is referring to kaparas dvarim, meaning vidu. So we are, according to Reb Shimon, not going to use pasuk chav to shed a light on pasuk yud. The lechaper olav in pasuk yud is a reference to olav meaning that very sa'ir hamishtalech, and it's referring to vidu. Don't bring me a proof from pasuk chav, which is addressing not the sa'ir hamishtalech, but rather the sa'ir hapnimi. Whereas again, if we go back to Rabbi Yehuda says the word lechaper in pasuk yud should be interpreted in the light of v'chila mechaper in pasuk chaf, and just like in v'chila mechaper, we're talking about a kapara that's achieved through matan damim. So too in the first pasuk, when it says Yom Chai lechaper, it's referring to the kaparas dvarim. I'm sorry, the kaparas damim of the soyer hapnim. Now the Gemara goes back to our discussion about Hagrola. And we had a shita of Rabbi Yanai that everybody, even Rabbi Yehuda, according to the Lishna Vasa, Rabbi Yanai agreed that Hagrola is ma'akev. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, only Rabbi Nechemia would say that Hagrola is ma'akev. But anyway, it's clear that we have shitos that Hagrola is ma'akev. Tashma. Let's learn a brisa that seems to indicate that it was absolutely unanimous, according to all Tanoim, that Hagrola is not ma'akev. Shalu Talmidov es Rabbi Akiva. What's the deal if Olav is smaller? Right, there was a special omen, a great sign if the Kohen Gadol, when he lifted up the gorel from the kalfi with his right hand, it said Lashem on it. He got the one Lashem. But Olav is smaller, in a case where the Lashem came up on his left side, does the Kohen Gadol have the right to change it around and put this Lashem on the right side? Meaning that the Kiddush and the determination of the two Se'irim is in the hands of the Kohen Gadol, not in the hands of the Hagrola. And Rabbi Akiva gave a very surprising answer. Amalem, he says, Al titnu makom l'tzdukim lirdos. The tzdukim were always kind of attacking and trying to undermine the Prushim. And we're not going to allow the Kohen Gadol to switch it around because, this is going to give, a lot of fuel for the tzdukim. They're going to say, you know what? The Prushim will always interpret the law in the way that they want to, We, the tzdukim, are the true loyal, shall we say, guardians, of the tradition. The Prushim, move it around each way. So now the Gemara analyzes the response of Rabbi Akiva to the Talmidim. Time, or the reason why that you're not allowed to, the Kohen Gadol can't switch around the lottery, is because al titnu makom l'tzdukim lirdos halav hafi madrina le. Fundamentally, after the tzdukim, Rabbi Akiva would have actually permitted switching around the gorol from yamin to small. The Amrit, if you're going to tell me that agrola ma'akva, which is according to Rabbi Yanai, everybody agrees that agrola is ma'akva, is kaven the kvated b'small, you already determined that the lashem is on the left goat, is heichi madrinale. How is it possible to now change the kedusha of lashem, of the sar lapnimi, from the Sar Lazazel that was already determined by virtue of the Agrola over to the Sar Lashem? Clearly indicating that Agrola ain't a ma'akva. Omar Rava says you have to reinterpret this brisa. Hachi Kamer, this is what the brisa has in mind. Excuse me. Allah Hagorol Bismol. If the gorol comes up on the left side from the left hand of the Kohen Gadol, again, we're not going to that on the Yoma that it's the scan who puts it. Right now, we're assuming it's the Kohen Gadol, because all the avodas hayom have to be done by the Kohen Gadol, including Agrola. The question was, can he change both the small and the yamin? And on this Amar Lehem al titnu makom l'tzdukim lirdos. Here I have to read to you a very important note here. He says the following. Kavanas hatalmidim shesholis Rabbi Akiva ma'adinim ola gorol b'smol v'nikva asoyer shel tzad smol Hashem ma'ushi akziru lo u'leseiro liyamin ha'imutu lahavir yachad ein es hagorol Hashem v'hein es hasoyer ha'omed l'smolo. In other words, what he's going to do is he's going to take the sa'ir that's on his left side and switch it over to his right side. And then he's going to take the Gorol Hashem and move it over to the right side. So in effect, he still has the Gorol operative because the Gorol has determined that the soil on the left side is Lashem. It's going to remain Lashem if he moves both the Gorol and the soil on the left side over to the right side. And Amar Lahem and Rabbi Akiva said that this should certainly be okay, except for the problem of the tzdukim. Toshma, now the Gemara wants to bring a proof to support Rabbi Yanai from the Brisa that the Hagrolos Makeves, meaning Alias Hagorolos Min Hakalfi, is Makeves. And now the Brisa is interpreting Pasuk Tes. Until now, we've been focused on Pasuk Yud, But let's read Pasuk Tes. And it says, V'kriv Aronis haso'ir asher ola olav hagorol Hashem vaso chatos. And the Bryce explains. Ilu nemar, there's an extra word here in the pasuk. It says asher ola olav hagorol. What's ola? The extra word ola here could have said asher olav hagorol. Yes, asher asher olav. If it would have just said asher olav without the extra word ola, is hayisi over. I would have said yani chenu olav. The Kohen Gadol should take the gorol lashem and place it on the soil that's ready for the akrav. But Talmud Lomer, the Torah adds Allah. It says Allah of hagorol, and Allah means kevan she'Allah. Once the gorol came out of the kalfi, and now we know which sar is Hashem, which is Lazazel. Shuv einot tzarech. He doesn't need the hanach. Lemai, what is the Bryce intending to tell us when it says that after Ola Gorol, he doesn't need Hanacha? Ilem le mitzvah, if you're going to tell me that this Bryce is discussing the issue of mitzvah, that after he was Ola, he was Mala the Gorol, then there's no mitzvah of Hanacha. Is Michlal Hanacha mitzvah nami lo? Are you telling me that there is no mitzvah of hanochas hagorolos al aseiru? That's impossible. That's an untenable position because the Torah says in the previous pasuk ches v'nasana aron al shnei asirim gorola. So we know that there's a mitzvah of hanocha. Elalav, by process of elimination, the brisa must be implying le'akev, that there's nothing that's ma'akev once there was an aliyah begorol. But the gorol itself is ma'akev. Yishma mino hagrola ma'akva, hanocha lo ma'akva. This proves. Rabbi Yanai Shita, the Gemara says, no, there's no proof from this brisa. The brisa is not referring to ein hanocha ma'keves, as you said, and therefore you want to be medayik that hagrola itself is ma'keves. This is what the brisa has in mind. Ilu nemar, if the pasuk had said v'kriv haranis hasoyer asher ola, without the word olav. There's a mitzvah of hanochas hagoron olav ad shas shchita, until the moment that he shechts the soyer that is Lashem, that olav hagoron Lashem. Talmud lomer asher ola kevin she'ola shuveno tzarich. Once he was ola in the gorol, and he placed the gorol on the soyer, and he was Mekayim the mitzvah of hanocha, shuven itzarach. He doesn't have to leave the gorol on the head of the soyer. As the Bryce is really totally focused on the mitzvah of hanocha and how to fulfill that mitzvah in the ideal, perfect way, like Atpil. And the Brisa wants to tell me that there's a mitzvah to do the agrola, to leave the gorol as a hanocha for a small, short amount of time. And b'di'evet, it could be that the agrola itself is not even ma'akev, but hence Rabbi Yan. And this brisa would hold agrola in ma'akeves. The discussion in the brisa is focused exclusively on the hanocha. And the question is, how much of hanocha he has to do in order to fulfill the mitzvah l'chatchila. But as far as hagrola is concerned, could be that hagrola is not ma'akev at all. Oshma, the Gemara now again wants to make an attempt at bringing a brisa to establish proof for Rabbi Yanai that hagrola is ma'akev even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Toshma, we learned in a brisa, and this brisa is focused on pasuk test like the previous brisa was. V'kriv aronis hasoyer charallah love hagorol Hashem, and then it says at the end of the pasuk v'yaso chatos. What do we derive from the words v'yaso chatos? Hagorol osel chatos. Only the gorol is kovea the soyer as a chatos. V'yein Hashem, the kriyas Hashem is not oseu chatos, which means that if he wasn't magriel, he just said that the sar should be lechatos, then there's no kvius shem chatos because ein Hashem oseu chatos. And the Brisa seems to indicate that hagrola is what creates the chatos. The Brisa now explains, why do we need a pasuk to teach me this din? Sheyachol, if not for this derivation, I might have thought, Halo dinu, I have a kavachomer, uma b'makom shelo kidesh hagorol, in all other karbanos. And we'll see about the ophos of Yoledis, which is one bird is for an ola, the other is a chatos. And now we have to be mafresh, we have to be mavar, we have to clarify which of the ophos is liola, which is lachatos. And there's no din of gorol. And all he has to do is say, this one is for an ola, this one is a chatos. And kiddush Hashem. So in other words, even in the absence of requirement of gorol, still, you are makadish it through kriyas Hashem. It's makom shekidesh hagorol. In the case of Seirim of Yoma Kippurim, where the gorol is makadesh the two Seirim and kovea the different shemos to clarify this sar is Hashem zol. Eino did she makadesh Hashem? It's upgrade. It's a kalvachomer that certainly he can be makadesh the Seirim. And he kovea each one for its din, this one for a chatas, and this one for lazazel, with kriyas Hashem. So if kriyas Hashem works where there is no gorol, then certainly kriyas Hashem should be meaningful where there is a gorol, and it should be a replacement for the gorol. Talmud Lomar, what the pasuk teaches us, Asher Ola Lov HaGorol Hashem, V'aso chatos. Hagorol osechatos v'ein Hashem osechatos. And here we have a clear-cut proof to Rabbi Yanai that hagrola is what generates the shem chatos and it's likuva. And now we turn to Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, and the Brisa now is a proof for Rabbi Yanai. Stam Sifra Mani. We have a principle that the Sifra, otherwise known as the Torah's Kohanim, the Medrash Halacha and Sefer Vayikra, is authored by Rabbi Yehuda, and Ktani Agorol Osechatos v'yein Hashem Osechatos Al Magorol Ma'akva. So we see that even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the Gorol is Ma'akev, and that's a clear-cut proof for Rabbi Yanai. The Gemara says Tuvta Demandi Yoma. This is a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan Shagrol Lo Ma'akva, who insists that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hagrola is not ma'akiv. It doesn't say chuka by Hagrola, and it's not an avoda that requires kodesh kadoshim. It's done by chutz, even though it's done for big day lavan. And nevertheless, the Hagrola is ma'akva. Tufta, there's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, and at this point, the Gemara rejects the shita. Okay, then. So we're going to stop on the top of Daf Mem Amud Aleph. Excuse me, on top of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph.